If you're in an office job, whether you're an intern or a full-time professional, one thing you can't escape from is email. And as remote work is increasingly common, your email is going to be a reflection of you. And if your email looks like this, the recipient's impression that you're disorganized and immature is going to be lasting. What's up everyone, it's Kenji here, and in this video I thought I'd explain how to write professional emails at work. See, while I was at university, I felt like this wasn't really a topic that was covered, yet when I got to my internships or my full-time jobs, it was expected of me to write in a certain way. And so, to avoid making the mistakes that I did, here's some tips and tricks for you. Firstly, does it really have to be email? And if you put yourself in the shoes of the recipient, on average an office worker receives about 120 emails every workday. Now that's a lot of emails, especially when your job description usually doesn't entail replying or reading emails. So before you send an email, think about whether it has to be an email. And the best way to know that is to see how your team communicates and copy whatever method that they use. But here's some good guidelines as well. Chat messaging apps like Slack or Teams might make sense when you need a quick answer like a yes/no or a confirmation, and they should mainly be used internally because they're hard to backtrack and search previous messages in case of disputes with clients like I thought we accorded on this price or this was the delivery date, no it wasn't, so on.
It's false. No way. Not this time.
Next up, there is calling or meeting, and this is best for difficult topics that require interactions, like what might be brainstorming sessions for a future marketing campaign. It's similarly useful for sensitive topics. Let's say you spent 10 million of the company's money to throw a massive Halloween party for the interns. That's probably not something you want to tell your manager via chat message. Jokes aside though, it's best to talk about promotions, salaries, or other opportunities in person, or at least via call. And lastly, you have email, which is best for sending detailed or important materials. For example, if you have a series of questions or you want to outline the key next steps in a project. Now suppose you've gone for emails and within the daily 120 emails that your manager receives, he or she gets one like this. So what's wrong with it? Well, a bunch of different things as you can see here. You've got a vague subject to the email, there's an unclear call to action, and a bunch of excess words. That's obviously not great, so let's see how we can fix it. First off, in an email we got the subject line, and depending on the subject line, the recipient is going to decide whether he or she wants to read it or they just want to ignore that email. According to a research report, US office employees average 199 unread emails, and odds are some of those emails will never be read. So if you're sending something out that's urgent that needs a reply from the recipient, you don't want to fall into that group. So here's how you should have a subject line if you need the recipient to do something. You can start the subject line in brackets saying action required, followed by whatever you need. Here, the recipient is clearly going to know what needs to be done and how long it's going to take. Sometimes you won't know the time frame, if so you can just remove that. If it's an action that's also time sensitive, here's some ways that you can get your co-workers to do it. If you know the exact date, in brackets you can put something like please reply by the actual date. Otherwise you can just say it's time sensitive, but if it's something really pressing you can always just put urgent. As for the body of the email, put whatever is most important first and then give some context. The mistake here is to do it the other way around, where the recipient has to read through every single word in the email attentively to understand whatever it is that you're looking for. Instead, if you put the most important thing first, so whatever you're looking for first, and the context afterwards, you give them the choice but not the obligation to actually have to go through everything. And here's an example where the most important thing, in this case the projected store opening cost, is first, and then there's an explanation as to why it's important and why the team needs it. So if the recipient knows what this email is already about, he or she can just send them the projections without having to read through the second paragraph. Next up, we have adding or removing people from email threads. But first, let me talk about Financial Edge. If you're interested in learning more about business or finance, I recommend you checking them out as they provide certified online courses. They're the instructors that teach new hires at the top 4 investment banks in the world, so you can get the exact same training online at your own pace. If you want to level up your work productivity, they have a business toolkit course pack going over all the relevant skills to become more efficient using Microsoft Office from Excel to PowerPoint presentations. Alternatively, if you want to learn more about finance, they've got plenty of in-depth courses on investment banking, private equity, and much more, taught by former industry professionals. So if you're interested, check out the link in the description below to get 25% off using code KENJI25. Alright, back to the video. And if you're adding or removing someone from an email thread, make sure you let everyone in that thread know. Why? For two main reasons. Firstly, it has to do with best practice, just being transparent with everyone about it. And then secondly, it's got to do with compliance. Maybe the person that you've added shouldn't be there because of a conflict of interest, but you don't know that. And if you've let everyone know, at least your manager might be able to call you out on it and remove that person. That's way better than, say, mid-project realizing that somebody that has a conflict of interest is in that thread and he's been reading all the emails. That means that the project is probably going to have to be stopped, and that's going to cost the company money. And here's how you can go about it. For adding someone, it can be as simple as +bill for visibility, or for removing someone, you can just write -bill for compliance. And if you want to make this more noticeable, you can always italicize the sentence, bolden it, or highlight it, depending on what your team's preference is. Similarly, don't get too carried away with exclamation marks or emojis. That's something that I learned myself the hard way when I did an internship. One of my managers straight up asked me to stop using so many exclamation marks, so make sure you don't do that. And at the top of the emails, we have the greetings. And as much as you may be friends with some of your coworkers, keep in mind that emails are often forwarded, so you never really know where they might end up. Suppose your manager is very laid back and you send him emails starting with "Yo, Bill." To Bill, that might be fine, but if that email contains some valuable information and is then forwarded to the head of the department or even to the C-level executives, that's obviously kind of embarrassing if you're calling people by "yo." So it's best to stick with a simple "hi," "good morning," "good afternoon," or even "dear," depending on how close you are with them. And lastly, here's some safety steps that you can take to not end up in an embarrassing situation. Trust me, it sucks when you send out an email, you spot a mistake, and there's nothing that you can do about it. The first thing you can do is change the default settings from reply all to reply. On Gmail, for that, just go to settings, see more settings, and from there go to reply. This way, when you reply something by mistake, it only goes to one person instead of going to the full thread of maybe 20 people. So one person is a lot less embarrassing than 20, I think. Secondly, if you're sending out an email, you don't want to send it out before you finish writing it or proofreading. On Gmail, sending it out by mistake is as simple as pressing Ctrl-Enter on a Windows or Command-Enter on a Mac, and you're already in trouble. So what you can do instead is to write the email addresses at the bottom, such that when you're done writing the email, you can copy and paste them to the top. Also, that's going to force you to read all of the email content down to the very bottom for proofreading in case you have any mistakes. Thirdly, if after doing all these things you still spot a mistake, there may just be one final thing you can do, which is the undo send option. And let me show you on Gmail how to change it. Just go up to settings, see all settings, and change the undo send option to max. In this case, that's 30 seconds. So this is what it's gonna look like, just a pop-up with an option to undo. And sure, it's not perfect, but it's still 30 seconds to save yourself from a potentially embarrassing moment. And here's some bonus tips. Instead of sending out a link as a whole, which tends to be quite ugly to be honest, what you can do instead is use a hyperlink. On Gmail, it's as simple as clicking on the insert link button, or if you want to use a shortcut, it's just Ctrl-K on Windows or Command-K on Mac. Another bonus is to add an automated out-of-the-office reply just to make life easier for your coworkers. For that, just go to settings, see all settings, and scroll to the bottom where it says vacation responder. The subject here is quite straightforward, and in the email itself, you don't just want to mention when you'll be gone for, but also who can be contacted instead of you. So before you press that send button, do remember these tips. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.